Okay, so next up, we have a special guest. He drove in all the way from Santa Barbara. He was featured on Forbes for being a one-person, $1 million company. So it's a revolutionary way of doing it. But also, he's got this unique concept where I was introduced by Patty Keating, and we just had a conversation and said, whoa, you got these two concepts that is like peanut butter and chocolate. And he was also interviewed for Forbes among millennial entrepreneurs and one of the top millennial entrepreneurs in the country. And he's got this unique concept that really is for game changers and people who want to start a movement and really make the biggest impact in the world. So for the sake of time, please get up on your feet. And please all welcome to the stage, Shannon Graham. All right, brother.
Hi, guys. So, here we are. Who's hungry? Raise your hand. No, seriously, who's hungry? Raise your hand. Who's starving? Raise your hand. I'm willing to bet that 100% of this room is starving to make a difference. If that's true, raise your hand. You know, it's a loaded question because you wouldn't be here if it wasn't true. So I get to play those little games. Okay, so let's get right to it. I don't think I have a lot of time. So, that sounds drastic, doesn't it? I don't have a lot of time. I've been coaching now for about 13 years, and I know that sounds funny. Today's my birthday, actually. I'm 34. Thank you. I started coaching when I was 21, and I've watched this industry, the self-improvement, personal development industry, change. And I've noticed that it's moved towards leverage and automation. And I grew up in a kind of a peak performance background, so athletics, things like that. And the relationships that I had when I was young with my coaches were very intimate, and they were over a prolonged amount of time. And if you look at any champion that plays at a high level, they typically have a coach that they work with very intimately over a prolonged amount of time. Singers, dancers, actors, business people, you name it. True or true? Raise your hand. Say yes. I want full participation, guys. You want to change the world. Like, let's... Yes. Come on. Okay. So I said, all right, I want to create a business model that is extremely simplistic and yet changes the world. And I noticed that there was a lot of leverage and automation going on, and I thought it was cool, but I didn't see the real change happening at the end of the day. We've all heard this. How many of you have ever bought a self-improvement book and didn't read it? Raise your hand. And for those of you who are not raising your hand, you are lying. We all do it. I've done it. We all do it. We all buy personal development courses that we don't do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I decided in 2014 to create this program called Legacy. And the idea was I wanted to partner with what I would consider visionary leaders. And there was a challenge because in order for me to serve them at a high level, I had to figure out how I could bring the most value to them. And the way that I figured out how to do that was that I had to tap into a part of myself that I had never been before. Right? They say what got you here won't get you there. So I said, okay, well, how do you do that? And historically, I had gotten paid for my knowledge and my experience. Both of those are finite. Both of those are limited. But my genius, my real genius is my imagination. And I think that we're on a very interesting kind of fork in the road that's coming up, which is the world is going to make a massive change. That's undeniable. But which direction it goes is a little bit up in the air at this point. And I said, in order to change the world, I have to be a better version of myself. So if historically I got paid for my knowledge and my experience, which were both finite, then how do I get paid to answer questions in which I don't know the answers to? And not only that, how do I answer questions in which the answers don't yet exist? How many of you have heard the story of the 4-minute mile? For those of you who haven't heard it, Roger Bannister, way back in the day, said 4-minute mile is not impossible. The entire athletic community believed the 4-minute mile was impossible. And one guy said, no, I believe it's possible. And sure enough, one day he did it. The interesting thing is, that year, a handful of other people achieved the 4-minute mile. And they didn't necessarily even train harder. It was just like this mental thing that happened. They just believed it was possible, boom, and then they could do it. So that was a metaphor to me. I said, if I can work with these visionary leaders and I can help them do the impossible, not just what's impossible to them, but what's impossible to the world, like what just hasn't been done yet, that would make a difference. So I created this program called Legacy, and I'll tell you just a brief story. I started working with this one guy in the program from New Zealand. And in New Zealand, they have this funky thing called tall poppy syndrome. Have you ever heard of that before? For those of you who have not, tall poppy syndrome is this mindset in New Zealand and Australia that's basically like, don't get too big. You know, like, hey, who are you to have a big idea? Just calm down. Just, hey, listen, I know you want to change the world, but just keep, you know what I mean? That's what tall poppy is. It keeps people down, because the tallest poppy gets chopped. And it's a plague in those countries. Per capita, New Zealand has some of the most innovative geniuses in the world. And yet, because of tall poppy, they create this amazing technology, and then they sit on it, and nothing ever happens. So this client comes to me, and he says, how do we raise the GDP of New Zealand by raising the GDC, which stands for the Gross Domestic Confidence? Talk about an impossible question. But it got me lit up because I thought to myself, wow, I've never had to rise to that level of thinking, of being, to figure out anything on that level before. So even though I didn't know how to do it, it was exciting, and it called forth a version of me that I had never been before. And for the other guy, it invited him to play at a bigger level. So the secret sauce here is when you decide to do something that's impossible for you, like how do I create a program? In my case, the price point was $150,000. How do I create a program that is so big ticket that it forces me to just be someone radically different? That was my impossible. And then therefore be able to work with people who have their impossible. So it took us about 4 months, and we cracked the code on this, how do you raise the GDP of New Zealand thing. GDP with the GDC. We decided that the 4-minute mile story was the answer. So we worked with one guy, one innovator. His name's Ollie. He created what's called a rapid public transportation system. He invented it 10 years ago. It's a zero-emission rail system, runs above the traffic line. It's genius. And no one's ever heard of it. The world hasn't been able to benefit because of what? Tall poppy, because of his mindset. Like, how many of us have ever gotten screwed over because of our mindset before? Like, how much does that suck, right? So here's this guy who invents, can you imagine being this guy who invents this world-changing technology and sits on it for 10 years? That sucks. So the client of mine works with this guy to help him remove tall poppy. So there's 2 challenges. Number 1, tall poppy, and number 2, most innovative geniuses are kind of like socially awkward. They're not the best value communicators. So we got him to remove tall poppy and give him the ability to look in front of a board or some investors and have the ability to stand and deliver. So much so that he got invited to India by the Prime Minister Modi to pitch his technology to the Transportation Board. And because he had removed tall poppy, and because he had a voice now, the Prime Minister of Transportation in India said, we want your technology. This is the technology that we're going to infuse into our smart cities that we just invested $1 trillion with a T dollars in. And he is now the front runner for a $220 million round of funding. So that's amazing because now India's transportation is forever changed. Ollie's life is forever changed. But the best part about it is he's gone back to New Zealand now like Roger Bannister. And they see him as the guy who ran the 4-minute mile, who did the impossible. So now, only 12 months later, this happened last year, only 12 months later, a handful of other people in New Zealand have done deals that are slightly less than, the same as, or just a little better than what he did, purely because he showed them that something better was possible. So how cool is that? Pretty cool. All because I decided one day, how do I get paid for what I don't know? And so my suggestion to you, as I watch the clock tick down, is that there's a difference between making a difference and the illusion of making a difference. And that's what I decided to truly focus on. How do I cut through all the noise and focus on only what's going to make a difference? And for me, what I decided was that how do I do the impossible? So the question that I would love to see every single one of you write down right now is, what is my impossible? Because if you figure out what that is, and it scares the hell out of you, and then you do it, does the world change, yes or no? And does that, but so here's the thing, like, not only does the world change, but what does that create? The ripple effect in doing the impossible creates and ignites even more people to do their impossible. And that's why I'm here, and that's what I encourage all of you to do. So thank you.
Real quick. Could you share, and thank you.
Just kidding. There will be none of that.
Absolutely there will be.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so how did you come up with the concept of highest impact,
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So I created a formula. I created a lens.
And write this down. This is so powerful. It's like a game-changing boom, aha.
Okay, there's two, right?
Yes.
The gift and the probability.
Yes.
Totally forgot about that. Okay. So I believe that there are two types of people in the world, people who have a gift and people who are a gift. And I'm pretty good at knowing the difference, and I'm willing to bet that the majority of the people in this room are a gift. If that feels right to you, raise your hand and say yes. It's a loaded question. I knew that you guys all were. So here's the difference, though. If you have a gift, I don't have my cell phone on me, but like this laptop is a gift to the world. How much good has been created because of laptops? Like a ton, right?
Yes.
You can make music, you can make movies, you can make documentaries, you can write books. I don't know where she went, the book writer.
There she is.
So the key to making a difference with a gift is leverage and automation. The more people that have phones, the more people that have laptops, the better. But there's another side to the coin, which is people who are a gift. And they're a very different crowd. This is like Jesus, or Mother Teresa, or Gandhi, or Buddha. These are people who go down in history as changing the world. That's not negotiable. That's not up for debate. Like, we can all agree that those people changed the world, but they didn't do it through leverage and automation. How many of you are familiar with the hugging guru, Amma? Amazing. What if she made like an online program of hugging? Like, would that change the world? No. So I'm just a good student, that's all, because I truly care about making a difference, so I want to understand, how do you do it the best? And what I determined was that there's two groups, people who have a gift and people who are a gift. And the way that people who have a gift change the world is fundamentally different than people who are a gift. People who are a gift, they change the world just by the intimacy of themselves. Like, Amma, she just stands there and she gives you a hug, like nothing all that complicated or crazy, but literally people just break down and they're transformed. Like, what the heck? So it's critical to understand which one you are. Now, I'm not against leverage and automation if you're not trying to deliver the gift with it. If you're using it as a bridge, right? Like how many of us have met awesome people online, like through Facebook or whatever, right? So technology is an awesome bridge, but if you are the gift, don't use technology to bring the gift, because that's you, right? Use technology as a way to get people in a close little setting like this, and then just pour your gift onto them, whether that's hugging or healing or coaching, or it doesn't matter. It's kind of all the same. So huge, huge, huge differentiation, because I tried both. I'm just a good scientist. I tried online products. Number one, I found that the majority of people that bought them didn't buy them. That didn't feel good. I didn't really feel like I was making an impact at the end of the day. Yeah, but Shannon, you sold a bazillion of them. Yeah, but like no one opened it. So is it really impact? So there's that. But then I created a formula. And the formula is, write this down, the highest probability of the deepest impact. Does that make sense? So at any given moment, especially with all the options available to you these days, you're at like not a crossroad, you're at like a multi-crossroad with how you can bring your gift to the world, aka yourself. However, if you apply this formula is the highest probability of the deepest transformation. All of the words in that sentence are critical. Highest probability, deepest transformation, right? So if I'm working with you, I want the probability that you get not just transformation, but the deepest transformation to be as high as possible. Does that sound sexy to you guys or no? It does, doesn't it? But no one talks about this stuff. I'm kind of like the rebel in the industry, because everyone's like, no, Shannon, I'm trying to sell my internet marketing bullshit. You know, like, come on. But you can do both. But what I'm trying to say is, this is critical because at the end of the day, you cannot outsource connection. You cannot outsource intimacy. And 20, 40, 50 years ago, if you would have told our grandparents, hey, let's all drive to the desert and be naked for a week, like, are you down? They'd be like, fuck no. Now people travel from across the globe to be there. They wait all year for Burning Man. Why do they do it? Because they're starving for connection, because we live in a digital age that's just like, it's just this. So especially, if you have a gift, if you are a gift, and you have something, whether it's your intuition or your healing or your coaching or it's your vision or your leadership or whatever it is, it's kind of your obligation to bring that to the world with the highest probability of the deepest transformation so that you can do the most good. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
Yes. Thank you, brother.
That's it.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, for coming. And all this happened was through one conversation of him sharing.